Now we're going to look at the expansion panel. Here's an example. As you can see, it's just a panel with a little arrow. And when you click the arrow, it expands out to show more information. Let's go ahead and check this out. We use our live template. And the first thing we're going to do here is make another class. Let's call this my item, actually. And in here, we're just going to say this dot is expanded, this dot header, and this dot body. So what we're really doing is we're just making a class that's going to hold the information we need for the expansion panel list. We've got an is expanded, just a boolean, along with a string header and a widget body. Pretty self-explanatory. All right, let's go ahead and jump into our actual class here. Grab our init state. And let's make a list. Not a linear progress bar, list. There we go. Thank you, IntelliSense. Okay, now that we've got our list, let's go into our init state and let's flesh this out. And in here, we are going to say items.add. So initially, we do not want these expanded. And for the header, we're just going to say item and whatever the index is. In this case, we're just going to say I. Now the body, this is where we're going to just add a container. Let's add edges at all 10. And for the child here, we're just going to add a new text. Just simply saying hello world. So as soon as our state's initialized, we're just going to populate this list. And let's go ahead and let's make a create item function. This function is going to return an expansion panel. And let's do this. All right, so the expansion panel is the individual panels where the expansion list holds all of the panels in there. So let's go ahead and move this out. We've got a little bit that we need to do here. We have a header builder. Whenever you see builder, think we need a function and we're going to have to populate that. So let's say build context along with a bool is expanded. Now in here, we're just simply going to return a new container. And we're going to have some new edges at all padding. And let's do 5. Then we've got a little bit of padding, but it's not overbearing. And in here, we're just going to make the header. let's say header. Got a little ahead of myself there. There we go. So really all this does is it takes my item and it converts it into an expansion panel and removes it back. I shouldn't say it converts it, it wraps it around an expansion panel and then returns it. So for our body, we want the actual item body, and let's go in here. And then we're just going to return those. So we've got our header builder, our body, and it is expanded. Now comes the fun part. We're going to actually build this thing out. So we've got our container along with a column. And we're going to get rid of some of this stuff here. So we've got our body as a new container with our padding. And let's get rid of this right here. If you're wondering why we're getting rid of that, it's because we're simply going to include a list view. And in our list view here, we want to add some stuff. List view is going to take an array of widgets, and we're going to say new expansion panel list. And we've got some things we've got to fill out here. So we've got an expansion callback. This is the actual function that's going to determine what happens when this thing is expanded here. So let's go ahead and flesh this out. There we go. We're going to want to set the state. Pretty much whenever you see something on the screen being rendered or updated, your first thought should be, okay, state is being set in the background here somewhere. So we're going to set the state. We're going to say items, and then we want the actual index here. We want is expanded, not items dot is expanded. I should say items index. Sorry about that. So we're just going to flip that around. Probably help if I had the equal sign in there. And then at the very end of this, this is where it gets a little bit confusing here. We're going to go here. And our children is actually going to be items, and we're going to map this. Now, if you remember from our Dart tutorials, mapping just takes a list and maps each item to a function. So we're going to map each item to the createItem function, and then we're going to just say toList. Let's go ahead and restart that from the beginning. And you can see here's our expansion panels, and everything's working as expected. Now, because this is a little bit confusing, I want to go over this just a little bit here. So really what's going on is we have our myItem class, which has our information. In there, key points is expanded, the header and the body, along with the constructor. We have a list of those items, and in the state, we're actually just making our list. Then we have our createItem function, which is actually being mapped into each individual item, and we're calling the createItem on each item in our items list. Whew, that is confusing. So let's make that a little simpler. We just simply have a list of items, and we're going to map that to the createItem function and convert it back to a list and hand it as the child in the children.